There are so many fun things we all can do to be healthier, no matter who you are or where you are. So let's move.
Oh, here we go.
Let's stretch in the grass.
What a play!
Let's play tag.
Wow, unbelievable.
Let's jump up and down.
Oh, what a way to finish it.
And most of all, let's eat better so that we have the energy we need to play an hour a day, every day.
Everyone can play. Just go to letsmove.gov to learn more.
In Fairfield County, something new comes across my desk every day. Crimes are committed, cases are solved, and a community is made safe by the hardworking employees of the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office.
Welcome to This Week with Sheriff Dave Phelan, a weekly program here on LSN Television. We're also carried by a number of our radio affiliates in Lancaster and beyond. Do appreciate you, the viewers and listeners that join us each and every week, and certainly the students at Fairfield Christian Academy that put this program together, J.T. Burcham and the gang. Our executive producer, Kelly Roberts, actually lines the guests up, gets a lot of the questions, does the background, does a terrific job behind the scenes. Back this week is Prosecutor Gregg Marx, was with us last week and shared a lot of things going on in the prosecutor's office. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
And we had a great program last week, and do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a busy guy.
There doesn't seem to be a shortage of work in either one of our fields. People ask how our business is, and I say we're in a very growth business because crime isn't slowing down.
Now, you know, you've done this for 3 generations, almost 30 years. And so how do you kind of, I mean, a lot of the stuff you do is depressing, and you're dealing with these criminals and a lot of pressure and things, but you kind of always seem to have a good attitude and a good outlook. Look, how do you kind of navigate through that?
Well, thank you, first of all. I've been very fortunate to have a really great staff, and I get to work with terrific people from law enforcement. What I do is, especially as prosecutor, I hire people that have a positive outlook, because we are like the emergency room, and I constantly explain that to the staff. Unfortunately, people don't meet me unless they've either been a victim of a crime, their son's been a victim of a crime, or I've prosecuted their son and they're a defendant.
Right.
So I need to try to be positive, because one of my skills, in my opinion, is that I really care about the victims. My job, right. I get paid to try to help victims, and I get paid to try to help law enforcement. That's a pretty nice procedure. In a recent trial, we called 4 firefighter medics as witnesses. That's just so wonderful to be able to work with people that are that dedicated with trying to save people's lives. And the number of law enforcement people that I've worked with is probably in the thousands. And these are people that are putting their lives on the line every day and trying to do the right thing. And my mission as county prosecutor is to have as many attorneys as I can that want to do the right thing, and I think so far I'm succeeding.
Yeah, and I think also, like myself, we live in Lancaster, so we have kind of, we don't live far from each other, and I think sometimes when you live in the community, you get kind of a vested interest in it, and it's where we raised our families, it's where we go, we worship, so there is that kind of, you know, you're serious about this, and we want to make sure we're doing a good thing for the community.
Right. Amazingly enough, we bought our home in the Tarhee edition in 1983, and we've never moved, and I love the home. And we have a full court basketball court, and there's a lot of people that went on to star for Lancaster High School, and some of them even played college basketball that grew up on my court. So it's been a lot of fun.
Last week we were talking about the Stacey Fairchild case, and about how DNA played into that. And so I know you've handled just a ton of these big cases. Probably hard to keep them all straight. How many cases do you think you prosecuted over the years?
Well, I even think I've had some involvement with at least 35 murder cases. frequently on appeals, or I've
Wow.
done lots of trials. I've never calculated how many total, but it's thousands.
Wow, wow. So that's a lot of experience.
Well, yeah, I'd like to think so, and amazingly enough, and I would say this on the campaign trail, somehow I go to work happy every day.
Right.
And that's because I get paid to help people, and it is a wonderful opportunity. You know, when the victims we recently had a very wonderful sentencing from Judge Behrens. Every one of the victims were thrilled with me.
Right.
The murder trial that we did last October, just seeing the look in the father's eyes after we convicted the defendant of every single charge in a case that he didn't think we'd even pursue, things like that are priceless.
Yeah, and I think so too. I think of so many people that have careers, and my dad was one of them. I mean, he got out of World War II and worked for a factory, worked for Columbus Coated Fabrics on Fifth Avenue. Never really liked his job, but he had a family to support. But I can remember how excited he was to be retiring, and then he went on to some things he really enjoyed in life. And I've often felt very blessed, as you do, because I can't wait to get to work.
It really is abnormal.
Yeah.
But it's just wonderful, and I'm fortunate in that so many people in the office, I've instilled in them the desire to help victims and help law enforcement, and I repeatedly let them know how helpful they are to this community, and it makes it fun. Everyone's glad to be there, and it's very pleasant.
And always something different, always something. As you think back on these 35 homicides where someone had lost their life, is there any cases that really come to mind that really kind of maybe even had an impact on, I know they've all had an impact on you personally, but really kind of just like, oh wow, this is kind of hard to navigate through, or this is kind of a complex case, and or this was one we pulled out of the hat, or whatever?
Well, the Engel case is certainly one that many people know about. This was a case that Commander Eric Brown was a young detective, and he was convinced that one of the children was missing. So Mr. Landefeld and I developed a strategy where we used felony investigation subpoenas, which very few departments statewide had ever used them, and we ordered both Engels to come to common pleas court and bring all the children. Well, they couldn't bring Christopher, and we questioned them under oath with the court reporters in the room, and I, of course, asked Edna where Christopher was, and she gave me one person's name, and about 15 minutes later I said, "And where is your Aunt Diane living?" And she did not remember that she told me that. And the look on her face was just priceless, that she'd realized I'd caught her in a lie. And that case was very, very traumatic, because those children had been abused as badly as any children I've ever seen. But Julie Blaisdell, who's still with the prosecutor's office, I think was an intern at that time. And we decided on a strategy that she would interview the children initially and just get to know them and find out a little bit about the case. And then I would try to meet the children and have them be confident with me. During the case, Children's Hospital summoned me to a meeting in a room where there were 10 doctors telling me how horrible it would be if I made those children testify. And I looked him in the eye and said, if those children don't testify, John Engel's going free. And we can't ever let this man out of prison. And the really ironic thing is the children did phenomenally. One of the children that I wasn't going to use felt so bad that his siblings were on, because the Columbus media covered every aspect of the trial, his foster father called me and begged me to have him testify. So I had him testify briefly.
Wow.
During the trial, Edna was especially mean to Angela Engel. And that was one of the few times I had real difficulty. And fortunately, my wife was close by. I went to meet her for lunch. I hugged her, cried a little bit, and came back. 7 years ago, I was in Franklin County. Now, this case was in the early 90s. I was in Franklin County in the clerk's office, and a blonde woman ran up and just jumped on me and said, "Greg, Greg, Greg." And this will surprise you, but I don't have so many blonde women that jump on me. It was Angela Engel.
Oh, my
gosh. And it was 15 years after this or 20 after that traumatic trial, and she still was in contact with me, still looked favorably upon me. I've had cases where rape victims have testified, and even when they didn't get guilty verdicts, they'll see me a few years later and thank you for believing in me. And those type of things are just priceless.
I've got to believe those sexual assault cases are some of the toughest, because sometimes it just goes down to one person's word against another person.
Correct. Those cases are very difficult. The defense frequently tries to put the victim on trial. We try to prevent that.
Right.
But everyone has the right to a fair trial. We have to firmly convince the jury that the crime was committed. And sometimes, occasionally, the defense attorney are able to convince the jury we have to prove their guilt beyond all possible doubt. That's not the law. It's all reasonable doubt. But it's still a matter of convincing the jury to believe what the prosecutors are saying.
Yeah, and you've got to have all the jurors on board, which is, when you think about it, it's a pretty monumental task sometimes.
It is a challenging task, but I've never shied away from challenges. And it is, on our website is the motto that we seek justice. And there have been times in my career where I felt that there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute somebody. And as prosecutor, I'm able to get a second opinion. And if the second prosecutor doesn't believe there's enough evidence, or if our grand jury doesn't believe there's enough evidence, we don't have to proceed with charges.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I think you would agree that in our system, we would never want someone that wasn't involved in a criminal act, even though there was an accusation, to go through that.
We've been very lucky just because we've established very good relations with law enforcement. Those are things we can discuss. And we're a checks and balances on law enforcement.
Right.
The judge is a checks and balances on us. And there are times that a law enforcement agent may not be happy with our decision, but we're at least willing to meet with the officer and explain why this is our decision. And we don't agree on every single thing, nor does every attorney in my office agree on every single thing, but we're always willing to talk about it.
We just got a couple minutes left. Real briefly, I guess before we do that, anything else you want to share before that we missed here? I know we've gone through a lot of stuff and the time's gone quickly.
Well, one of the things I would share is just how good the relations are with law enforcement in this community. I'll have 32 years in as a prosecutor in December. The sheriff's office and the Lancaster Police Department have never worked better than they do now. That is a wonderful thing. All departments are shorthanded, but they're able to work together, and it definitely benefits our community. Our staff is very willing to help. We are very interested because the job market is so bad for attorneys. I'm able to have law students volunteer for free. Well, every year the law students seem smarter than they were the year before, and it really is helpful. And they did even help with the recent Fairfield trial a great deal, and that's very pleasant.
And again, congratulations on that. That was a tough one, but you prevailed.
Thank you. And one of the interesting things is we have another very important case coming that the same detectives are involved in. That's the Gates case. And Detective Nicolia is the lead investigator. And it's just, when I recently met with him and Detective Roberts, I said, we're going to spend a lot of time together. And Detective Stats and I have a very important rape case. I mean, they're just a lot of really important good cases.
We're going to have you back because we didn't cover half the things that would probably been interesting, and so I'd like to have you back, maybe cover some other cases, and if you'd be willing, we'd love to have you.
I'd be glad to do it. Thank you.
Special guest, Prosecutor Gregg Marx with the Fairfield County Prosecutor's Office, a veteran prosecutor that continues to do a great job for our community. Well, the clock on the wall says we've got to go. Until next week, same time, same place. God bless, and we'll see you right here.
I think we just stay here and take the next
Yeah, we can do.
You're in charge.
That's for this.
I didn't need help from anybody. I was good at everything. And this, the drugs and the alcohol, I couldn't stop doing it. I went down a path of destruction, just about escaping the feelings. I never used one without the other. It was chaos. Dump trucks, insanity, plowed into us. I know it was the devil. I actually got suspended from baseball. I said, I need help, and I can't do it anymore. I fell on my own. You do with me what you want to do with me, but I surrender.